Welcome, everyone. We are super excited that you are here with us today. I know you just sat through Chris's session. I'm sure you were encouraged by that. And now you're entering into the very first seminar session. And this seminar session is actually on leadership. We designed two separate seminar sessions about leadership. And so we brought someone here today that is super special to me. And I know he'll be an encouragement to each and every one of you. His name is Dave Fincham. Now that last name may sound familiar. Why? Because it's my last name as well. It is my dad. And so he is a John Maxwell certified trainer, but also an executive director with John Maxwell. So he trains leadership all over the place. He trains executives and business people, and he's decided to help us today. And so we're super excited and privileged to have him here with us today. But here's the coolest thing about my dad. Now he is my dad, so I'm a little prejudiced, but he also, he loves the Lord Jesus Christ. And he's been in your shoes. He's actually been a youth leader, a children's worker, and so he's walked your walk. And so everything he delivers today will be through the lens of his experience with Word of Life. And so I know you're excited. I just want to welcome Dave Fincham.
All right. Well, good morning. Thank you, Brent, for that great introduction, especially coming from my son. That makes me feel really, really special. But you know, we're really excited about you being here because we know that this is a very special day. It's a special day because when Word of Life leaders come together with a common goal, here's what happens. We come to grow and to develop to be more like Christ, to be able to help boys and girls, teenagers, adults. And I know you're excited about this. This is going to be a very special day. Now, I hope you had the opportunity to be able to download the notes because the overall presentation is going to move very, very fast. But before we get started, let's take a look at our agenda. You look at our agenda, we've already gone through the introductions and the welcome. I'm going to give you a chance to meet our family. We're going to tell you why we love Word of Life and how we've been active. It's just been a major part in our life. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about leadership truths, the law of the lid, and then finally we're going to talk about the law of awareness. So you see on the agenda, it is power-packed, and we're going to move really, really quickly. What a good-looking family. When you look at this bunch, isn't this a good-looking family? You know, you look at the whole crew. Certainly I have 3 boys, but I have 3 beautiful daughter-in-laws, and I have 9 super grandchildren. And I have 1 amazing wife. We've been married for 46 years, and in 11 days, it will be 47. She is my rock, and certainly she is my helpmate. Now, when you look at this family, as Brent said, we are Word of Life through and through. All the boys have graduated from the Bible Institute. They've all served positions on the Word of Life staff, and now they're actively involved in ministry. You take a look at the picture, Matt right here, he's a children's pastor. Out of the state of Georgia. Chris in the middle, he's an executive pastor in California. And then you've already met Brent. He is a regional director for Word of Life Ministries. As Brent said, we've had a lot of opportunities, and we consider it a great pleasure to be able to serve in all forms of Olympians and teens and all the active ministries that Word of Life has. But when I look back, the 2 that really speak to me is when I was a Word of Life Olympian administrator. You know, the Lord really blessed. That club went from 35 to 125. And what I really think is so great, we had 35 to start with. And when it was all said and done, we had 40% that came from our church, and we had 60% that came from the community. So the Lord really blessed, and it was just a great, great time. And then I also loved writing on the Olympian writing team. That was very special as well. When you take a look at this statement, this is a statement as president of Fincham Consulting and as a John Maxwell executive director. I work with leadership every day, whether it's talking about developing a business, whether it's talking about coaching, whether it's talking about training leaders. So I deal with leadership every day, and I truly believe that this statement is true. Everything rises and falls on leadership. You know, I think if you analyze that statement, you're going to find out that history has proven that true. And I think it will continue to prove that true. So if you look at that, if everything rises and falls on leadership, then really what is leadership and why is it so important? Well, here's why it's important. It is because it shapes our entire world. It shapes our family, it shapes our churches, it shapes our work. You can just go on and on. Leadership shapes our entire world. Now, if it shapes our entire world and it is important, what do you think leadership is? Now, some of you are going to say, Dave, that is just a real novel question. Why would you even present that? Well, let's take a look. If you look at the word leadership, you're going to find 760 million results. So what is leadership? The definition that I've chosen today comes from John Maxwell. And when you look at this definition, I think it is one of the best definitions for leadership. And I also think it's the leadership that is simplified in this definition. It says leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. Let me say that one more time. Leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. Now the question is, what type of influence do you have? Is it positive or is it negative? How do you lead? Are you adding value? Is it positive value or is it negative value? So very, very important. Let me give you an example of that. You know, we were probably 15 years ago, we were in a conference just like this, and they asked us to put on an Olympian program. It was supposed to be cut back to about 45 minutes. And so we ran the program, and we had a great number of people there. But there was one gentleman that was sitting in the middle of the crowd, and he wouldn't take his eyes off me. And so I went over to Cheryl and I said, I don't know what's going on, but this gentleman will not take his eyes off me. And so we finished up the program, and our entire staff said we would just wait and we'll answer any questions that you might have. And so there was a long line, and this gentleman was all the way in the back. And so he finally made his way up, and he looked at me and he says, you don't remember me, do you? I said, no, I'm sorry, sir. I don't remember you. He says, I used to go to East Leonard Baptist in Grand Rapids. And he said, I used to walk in the snow to come to your Sunday school class when you were teaching second grade. You know, and when I look at that, I did not realize how powerful influence would be in his life. Influence truly is powerful, and we need to have positive influences on the lives that we affect in both Word of Life and in the public and in all that we do. Now let's take a look at some leadership truths. First of all, we know everything rises and falls on leadership. We know in its simplest form, leadership is influence. Number 3, everyone is a leader because we all influence people. It is said that the shyest person in the world influences 10,000 people during the course of their lifetime. So you and I can't run and say that we're not a leader, because we are, because we have influence. It's either negative or it's either positive. Number 4, leaders influence people in 2 ways, which we've talked about, both positive value or negative value. And finally, and this is really, really important, leadership is a journey. It's not microwavable. I hope that you don't walk away from with the 2 sessions on leadership, that you don't walk away and say, I have a couple, 2 or 3 principles, and then I can just pop them in the microwave. I can pop them in the microwave, and then all of a sudden I become a leader. That's not the case. Leadership is a journey. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sometimes it's 2 steps back and 1 step forward. And that's the reason why we lose so many leaders, is because they're not willing to take that journey. So we want you to know that leadership is a journey, but it's well worth it. Now, let's talk about traffic laws. Are traffic laws important? I guarantee you, if I walk out of this session and I go out and I start to drive and I get a ticket and it costs me $160, I'm going to think, man, that was not a good idea. Leadership laws and traffic laws are really important. If I go out and I'm talking on my cell phone and I get in an accident, I'm going to find out that traffic laws are really important. Now, you also must understand we have leadership laws as well. We have on the foundation, there are 21 laws. On teamwork, there's 17. And then on growth, there are 15. That's 54 laws. So what do we know about leadership laws? First of all, laws can be learned. They're either easy or some of them are tough, but they can be learned. Number two, they can stand alone. The laws complement one another, but they can stand alone. Number three, the laws carry consequences. If we apply leadership laws and we do it consistently, we're going to have great success. But if we don't, we're going to have failure. And you know the problem with failure, when we don't follow those laws, it just doesn't affect us. It affects a lot of people. So there are consequences to not following leadership laws. And then number four, these laws are foundational. They are foundation. They are the foundation of leadership. We need to learn them. We need to practice them. And then we need to apply them to life. So we come to the question of the hour. How do we reach our leadership potential? First of all, we must embrace leadership laws. And the first one that I would like for you to embrace is the law of the lid. The law of the lid says leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. Now, what does that really mean? Well, if I could see all of you, what I'd like for you to do, I want you to raise your hand. Raise your hand, and because you're Word of Life leaders, I'm going to automatically give you a 6. We're going to grade from 1 to 10, 1 being low and 10 being high, and I'm going to give all of us a 6 for our leadership ability. What the law of the lid says is that you and I cannot lead anybody past a 5 because we have a cap. We have a cap on our leadership ability. Now, some of you are going to say, Dave, you don't understand. I am super, super dedicated. Well, let's take a look at this chart. Let's say you have the leadership of ability of a 1, but you have a dedication of an 8.5. Look how effective you are. Now let's come over to this side. And let's say you have a leadership ability of a 6, but you have a dedication of an 8.5. Look how effective you are. Now, when you look at this, here's what I know that you guys are looking at. And I put this in your notes. First of all, you're all saying, what is my leadership number? And what I've given you 21 leadership qualities. We don't have time to go through this exercise, but I would really like for you to do it before the weekend's over. Here's how you do it. You give yourself a grade from 1 to 10 on these leadership qualities, and then you add them all up and you divide by 21. And then that is your leadership lid. Now, when you look at that, here's what's going to happen, and I'm going to get you really mad. I'm kind of going to really get you upset. Because if you come up with a 7, if you come up with an 8, if you come up with a 9, here's the deal. Your leadership number really doesn't matter. What you really need to do, and what I need to do, is we need to give that same sheet with those same 21 leadership qualities, and you need to go to 10 people that will really give you honest answers on your leadership ability. And then let them grade you and divide by 21, and that will be your leadership lid, because that truly is reality. That is what they see in your leadership ability. Now, the good news about that is we can all raise our lid. That whatever the number might be, that is just the starting point. We can all raise our leadership lid. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we learn the rule of 5. What does the rule of 5 say? It says that all of us have a forest. We go out, and what we need to do is we need to pick a tree. We pick a tree that's either small or it's really big. And what we need to do every day, we need to go out there and we need to chop it 5 times. I didn't say 10. I didn't say 15. We need to go out every day and we need to chop that tree. Now, we don't need to go one day and pick this tree, or we need to go and pick another tree, because all that's going to happen is we're going to have a bunch of bruised trees. But if we go out there 5 times each day, and we do that, no matter how big that tree is going to what? It is going to fall. Well, that's what the key to the rule of five is. You need to find your tree. What is your goal? What is your purpose? What is your compassion? What is your strength? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to knock down? What are your tools? Where's your axe? And so when we look at that, we take it right in to raising our leadership lid. We need to do these 5 things every day. The first thing we need to do is we need to lead ourselves. If we wouldn't follow ourselves, how can we expect other people to follow us? We need to lead by example. We need to lead by values, and we need to lead by visual sight. We can't hide. We need to let people see. I can remember when I was on mission trips. I've been to South America 6 times, and I've been to Africa, Malawi, Africa, twice. And whenever I would lead devotions, they always said, Dave, get up early and get out front so that everybody can see your that you're doing your devotions. Now, that wasn't to say, hey, how big Dave is because he's out there doing his devotions. What we were doing is we were setting a visual example of doing our devotions. So leaders need to be visual. You say, why would that be? It's because we need to remember, we don't want to be leadership travel agents, sending people where we've never gone ourselves. Number 2, every day we have to add value to people. We add value to people when we value people. If there's ever a time when we need to value people, it is today. We can't be like Linus when he says, I love mankind, it's just people I just can't stand. We need to love people. When we look at that, we love people by loving people. Now you look at that and you say, you know, and I understand, some people are really tough to love. But let me give you a hint. Now you may not think this, but even myself, there are days when I'm sure Dave Fincham is really tough to love. But there are also days when I think you're really tough to love, if we were really honest. But you know what the good news is? Jesus died on the cross no matter what. It says, we were yet sinners, but Christ died for us. He loved us so much, he took us just as we are. And that's how we need to take people. We need to love them. Number 2, and this has 4 components. We need to value people by knowing and relating to what people value. And what does that come down to? That comes down to listening, that comes down to learning, and that comes down to leading. We need to what we call lean in. Because here's what generally happens with leaders. We walk in and we lead, then we listen, and then we learn. But if we are going to value people, if we're going to love people, we need to listen, we need to learn, and then we need to lead. Number 3, every day we've got to become more valuable to people. We have to grow. You say, Dave, why do we have to grow? Well, if you do not grow, you do not have anything to give back. If you're dealing with an Olympian, if you're dealing with a teen, if you're dealing with an adult, if you're not spiritually growing, then what do we have to give back? And so we have to continue to become more valuable so that we can invest in people. Number 4, we've got to value the things that God values. Now, what does God value? What does God value the most? He values people. He sent his son to die on the cross for sinners. He values people, and we need to value people. Number 3, every day we need to study leadership. Earl Nightingale said, and he was one of the first ones to say it, he says, if you study a subject for 1 hour a day for 5 years, you will become an expert at that subject. You and I can read, we can listen to CDs, we can listen to audio players, we can go to learning lunches, we can go to leadership conferences, but you and I need to continue to study leadership every day. Now, some of you are saying, Dave, I don't have time. There is no way I have time to be able to read a book or do anything on leadership. Well, let me give you an example, something that happened to me. You know, when I was in Ohio, I had a vice president of marketing position, and I had a 45-minute drive, and I had it broken down. Every day I would go to Circle K, I would get a 24-ounce coffee with French vanilla, and I would get a banana, and I would get a bar, and then I would take off to the interstate, and here's what would happen. I would spend 45 minutes listening to Mike and Mike on ESPN. When our pastor preached, he said, what are you doing? Are the things that you are doing, do they have eternal value? And I was thinking, listening to ESPN, does that really have eternal value? So here's what I did. I hit my spot, Circle K, got all the items that I needed. I hit the interstate, and I spent my first 20 minutes praying for the people that were on my prayer list that day. And then the last 15 or 20 minutes, I would either listen to preaching or I would listen to an audible leadership tape. Think of what you can, and I did that both ways. And so if we evaluate our time, we have time to study. Every day we need to practice leadership with what we learn. And finally, and we'll go into this later on in the presentation, every day we need to intentionally grow. Now, when you look at this, let's review what we've learned about the law of the lid. We know every day we need to lead ourselves. Every day we need to add value to people. Every day we need to study leadership. Every day we need to practice leadership. Every day we need to intentionally grow. Now, for some of you, those may be new concepts, but let me tell you, and this is really, really important. Those are just head knowledge if you don't have a sense of direction. Do you have a sense of direction? Do you know where you're going? The road to success? Some of us are lost, and some of us are very lost. So that brings us to the law of awareness, which says you must know yourself to grow yourself. What are the things that we need to know? First of all, do we know our purpose in life? Do we know our passion in life? Do we know our priorities in life? Do we know our platform in life? We're going to go through these very, very quickly, and I'm going to use myself as an example. But what is your purpose in life? I think here's what my purpose is, and I think yours is the same, and that is to love God and to love people, and that filters down through everything that you and I do. Mark chapter 12 and verse 30 through 31 says, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. So our priorities is to love God and to love people, and that is our measuring stick, and virtually that goes down through everything that you and I do. That is our purpose. What is our passion? What is your passion? Here's what I know about passion. If the Lord gives you passion in a particular area, and it came from the Lord, I guarantee that he's going to give you the talents and the abilities and the giftedness to be able to move forward with that passion. And once you start to grow those talents and abilities, you're going to move right into your strength zone. Now, the question you ask is, how do I find out what my strength zone is? First of all, we've got to ask people. We ask people, what am I doing well? Not what am I doing right, but what am I doing well? We've got to get specific and ask people to really go down to details, and then we have to listen to what others say. If you have a passion to sing, but nobody is telling you that you're good at singing, you may need to evaluate your passion. But if people are saying, hey, he's really good at IT and he's really been gifted, maybe you need to move forward with that passion, because the Lord is going to give you the gifts and the talents to be able to continue and to accomplish all that he has for you. What are your priorities? Do you know what your priorities are? Here's what my priorities are. My priorities are to grow personally. I understand that in my life, in my season of life, that I need to grow spiritually and I need to grow professionally. If I do not, I am not going to reach my leadership potential. Now, how do you do that? Here's exactly how you do this. You have got to control your calendar. People say, well, that's time management. Well, you know, that is really a pet peeve of mine because there's no such thing as time management. You can't add an hour to a day. You can't take an hour away. You can't speed it up. You can't make it go any faster than it goes. Time just continues to move on. But here's what you can manage. You can manage your choices. Someone is going to fill your calendar. Who are you going to let it be? Now, how do I work through that? Here's how I work through that. I take and I look at the 80-20 rule, this process, what that really says, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but let's say you have 10 items to do. You pick out the top 2 that's going to give you the greatest rewards, and you do those first. Now, when you look at this chart, I can't even remember where I got this, but I know I've used it for a long time, and here's how I break out my day and my week. I look at the top 20%, and the top 20%, that's high importance and high urgency, and I do those. Then I look at the top 20% that says it's high importance but low urgency, and then I schedule those. And then we move down to the lower 80%. Low importance and high urgency, I either do that myself, maybe later in the day, or I delegate it off to somebody else. And then we come to the last 80%, low importance and low urgency. Then generally, I just eliminate those. Those are things that I absolutely do not need to be doing. Now, what is my platform and what is your platform? Here's my platform, certainly my family. I want to be able to leave a leadership legacy that they can pass on to their grandchildren, and it can move forward. I want to be able to do the same thing with my church family and with Fincham Consulting. So that is what my platform is. When we look at all this and we kind of do a general view, here's what we really need to know, and we boil it all down to this. How do we reach our leadership potential? We create an intentional growth plan that embraces God's leadership laws. Number 2, embraces our purpose, our passion, our priorities, and our platforms that God has given you. And number 3, we control our calendar by using an 80-20 method. Now, you notice I said an 80-20 method. You may have a different method that works that way to where you pick out the top 20%. But that's how we roll. That's what you really need to know. Now let's go to our questions. If you have any questions, I have put down my email address, and if we don't have time to be able to answer that, you certainly can send your questions to me, and I will get back with you just as quick as possible.
Well, we just wanted to take some time to talk about maybe a question or two that maybe you might have. Normally, this is a recorded session, but normally we would have opportunity for you to respond back and forth. So it'd be a great opportunity to talk to my dad. But there's a lot of information you shared. I mean, it was a lot, and it's all good. And I know you could have taken time to like go through each one more and more and more in greater detail. But let's just ask one question that I think is a really practical question. It's a question that I could probably use some help in as well. This idea of, I know you don't like time management, but of making good time choices. Can you give us some practical examples for our leaders? I know guys in leadership, you already have families most of the time. You are working at the church, you're working in your work, you're running around doing tons of stuff. And to make time for intentional growth is super, super important. So can you give us some practical ways to do that, Dan?
Well, one of the biggest things that I find, whether I'm dealing with a CEO or whether we're working with churches, I find out that people don't do their schedule early. I would always say that you should have your schedule done the Friday before you walk into a Monday. When I was leading I was a VP of sales and marketing, I always asked my staff, I need for you to pull off the road, get your lunch on Friday at noon. About 1 or 1:30, I want you to plan out your schedule. I want you to plan out your schedule because 2, you're ready to go for Monday, and 3, I do not want you thinking about your schedule over the weekend. I want you to enjoy yourself. But if you don't do that, you're already way, way behind. If you start Monday and you have to start planning, then you really have some real issues. Second thing that I think we need to do is we need to be able to do the things that are our top 20%. We need to do those in the mornings. If we are doing things at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we're not giving our best time to the things that are really, really important. So we really need to do this. Now, this next one, people aren't going to like, but they're going to say, I don't know where my time goes. I would really urge you to do a time study of yourself for a week. Break it down at 15-minute segments, and when that's all said and done, I think you're really going to be surprised at where your time goes, and that'll be a good start.
That's good. That's good. That's a good practical step. The evaluation, sometimes we don't know where our time goes. We could say, oh no, I'm totally like focused all day long. But then when you do that time study, you can actually see, oh, actually there's some gaps, there's some margin here that I waste time. And so that's super, super helpful. I hope you guys were encouraged. I know there's a lot of information. I'm super glad that my dad could join us. I want to say thank you for joining us. I know you're going to have a great rest of the day, the rest of the conference. We're praying for you, and thank you for joining us.